Alright, here we are back with another how-to video. Now I know that in quite a few of my other recent videos, I've done a lot of work with the aluminum molds, like making the rippers and whatnot, but I figured with this video, get back to my roots, so to speak. We're gonna use plaster, we're gonna use modeling clay, we're gonna use some Legos, some wire here. I'm gonna show you how to use the modeling clay, the plaster, and the wire with Legos to make your own sliding egg sinkers or your own sliding sinkers. So without making you wait too much longer, let's get into it. So I'm going to put aside the plaster for now. I'm going to put aside the wire for now. And we're going to build this thing first with the good old modeling clay. Now with the modeling clay, and before I get into that, I'll put all the links to what I'm using in the description below so you can see everything that's available there. But with the modeling clay in particular, you really want the non-hardening stuff because it allows you to constantly reuse. Like this is the same modeling clay I've had for probably 2 years now. Again, it doesn't get hard. You can put it in the microwave, soften it up if it's cold outside to get it malleable and pliable. But yeah, non-hardening modeling clay. So what I'm first going to do is I'm going to break a big chunk of this off. Doesn't have to be a huge chunk. Just need enough. Alright, actually that might not be enough. Which side should I go on? This one or that one? Let's go with the bigger one just in case. Because I can always add more. Can always take away, but it's just a lot easier when you start with a bigger piece. Now what you're going to want to do is flatten it out. So I have a like a 3/4 inch dowel right here. So I'm gonna fast forward through most of this, but just to show you how I start, just push it down just like you would a cooking roller. You're just flattening the dough down, whatever you're gonna make, just flatten it down. So this is a 3/4 ounce, this is a 1/2 ounce, and a 3/8 ounce. So you know that the bottom it needs to be fairly thick for the plaster, but let me go ahead and flatten this, and I'll bring I'll fast forward through the biggest flattening part. Fast forward this part. All right, so that's as much as I'm going to flatten that, because what you got to take account for, especially if this plaster mold is going to be used to pour multiple size weights, right? For this one, I'm going to do 3 different size weights just so you can see that you could do different weights. I recommend when you are doing a plaster mold for these weights that you do the same, so you can pour the same, if it's 3, 4, however many cavities in the mold, you just pour the same. But you can do multiple sizes, and that's what I'm going to show you in this one. But you could see how with the 3/4 and the 1/2 ounce, they are see, how would I say it, varying in diameter. So this one is wider diameter, this 3/4 ounce wider diameter than this 1/2 ounce, and again this 1/2 ounce is wider diameter than this 3/8 ounce. So you want to make sure that when you're doing the modeling clay that you have it thick enough to hold and have half the weight, the largest weight, doesn't go down to the bottom of the modeling clay. So this piece right here in particular is probably a good 1/3 inch or so. So definitely plenty of room for this 3/4 ounce to go through. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to see how many Legos wide it will take to do this properly. So I'm going to line these up, right? So I line these up down here with, so probably that wide. I'm going to take my Lego pieces. I'm going to see how wide I need to be on this. So let's see here. 1, 2. Can I get away with 4 wide? I can get away with 4 wide. Let's see, 4 wide, 4 and a... Yeah, let's do 4.5 wide. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, and and then this half one will go down that side. So what you want to make sure to think about when you're doing this, keep in mind that the plaster itself needs to be thick, because the melting point of lead is 644 degrees or 624 degrees. But anyways, that lead is so hot when it goes in the plaster, you need the plaster piece, the wall, and the depth of each of these plasters, the top and bottom, to be thick enough to hold the heat. If it's too thin or the mixture isn't right, the heat that you pour these leads into the plaster mold will crack the plaster mold. So what I was looking for here is just to see how thick that sidewall is going to be. So we got about 3/4 of an inch over there, 3/4 or so, half an inch, about 3/4 of an inch over there, and the top's going to be, see, we'll do probably about close to an inch or 3/4 of an inch on top. So we'll do the same thing on the bottom, about there on that. So about 2.5 down. Okay, get a couple more Legos. Alright. So that's what the base is going to look like, right? So you're going to have 4.5 across, 2.5 down. That should be plenty. And then, of course, the depth of the plaster. So I'll finish making this, because then we're going to take the base of this Lego piece and imprint on this modeling clay, which will make the base that we're going to set these weights in. So I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of these Legos on, and I'll fast forward through this and put on regular speed when I'm done putting the first base together. Alright, cool. So that's all set. So the Legos ended up being 4 layers deep. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we'll go ahead and match this, or set this Lego frame onto this plaster, or I'm sorry, onto this modeling clay piece. Get the imprint of that bottom layer of Legos, take it off, cut it out, and then fit these pieces of, or these weights in there. So let's see if it's ready. A little wider. So it needs to go a little bit bigger. Should be alright still in terms of depth. Alright, let's see here. Go ahead and take this, sit it on top, making sure, so you got corner in there, corner there. This corner has clay, that corner. Alright, so now that it's completely covered, or fits, go ahead and take the clay, the Legos, push down, so it leaves an imprint in that modeling clay. So you can see, all you need to make sure is you have your corners, your inside corner, corner, corner. And then you're going to take a razor blade, and you're just going to simply cut down this line. That I cut the outside line, so I know for sure it's going to be snug inside the mold. Okay, so that's out. Same thing. Outside piece. Okay, excellent. Now that we know this is going to fit in there, what we need to do is, first, you're going to get your wire. So this is the 325 pound, number 18 size American fishing wire, toothproof stainless steel leader wire. So you can get this at tackle shops, you can get it at Amazon. I'll leave the link below, of course. But what you're going to do is you're now going to take this wire, you can get it to where it's not poking through the plastic, and we're going to cut a piece that's exactly the width of this piece of modeling clay. So go from there to about right there. So I'll go ahead and take a pair of wire cutters, cut that right there. Make sure this is straight as can be. Okay, how's that look? Almost. A little straighter here. If you have a wire straightener, might not be a bad thing to use at this moment. Okay, get that straight as it's gonna get. Set this on onto the modeling clay. Make sure that's about right. It can be a little short. That's gonna be fine. You just want to make sure it goes through all 3 of the weights. So cut it a little short. Let's see here. All right, that works. So you're gonna take one, put it through. Take another, through. Take your last one, put it through. Now you want these as evenly spaced as possible. Doesn't have to be perfect. But you're gonna sink your larger one first, and you're gonna sink it all the way till that hole in the weight is halfway into the clay. Remember, this one's gonna go down further than this one, and that one's gonna go down further than this 3/8, just by size or diameter of the specific weight that you're using, if they're bigger. And again, in this case, and only in this case, because I'm using 3/4 ounce, 1/2 ounce, 3/8 ounce, that, just for examples. If I was making my own, I'm just gonna use one weight only. But again, for just the purpose of this video, show you that you can make multiple sizes. That's all it's intended to do. Okay. All right, that hole's halfway, that's halfway. This one not quite. Okay, that's about right there. That's there, that's halfway in. That one's not quite. Okay, that one's good. Now what you're gonna do is you're just gonna take that modeling clay, make sure it's pushed up against the walls so there's no space, no air. You wanna make sure that it's as flush as possible so when the plaster goes up against it, right, that it makes as clean of a cavity as possible. Okay. All right, so that's all done. So now what we want to do is make the funnels that you're going to pour the lead into. Okay, so you just take some more of the modeling clay. I like to make a little funnel. It doesn't have to be funnel shaped, kind of like a V or a funnel. Right, so you're gonna do something like that. You're gonna fit it in here. What I do now is I'm gonna take one of these sides apart. Lego base or Lego framework. I'm gonna fit it around. See, when you put the weights in, it spreads the modeling clay a little bit, so you got to kind of work it back into it. Okay. This is why I said cut on the outside, because then it really gets it snug so none of the plaster leaks out. Really snug, actually. Okay, now you're gonna make sure you complete the frame. It'll work. Alright, so now again, smash that clay up against the side of these Lego pieces. And just so you're aware, again, I use Legos because it's just easy to make different size molds whenever I want. I don't have to have different size containers. So if you want to use something different, by all means, go for it. But Legos is just, like I said, it's easy to build different sizes, that's all. Okay, now that that's put back together, now I can put the funnel in. Okay, so again, might need to go a little bigger on this one. We'll see. Now you fit this right up against the wall of the Legos and to the weight. Okay, you see how that's right up against it? I'm just going to use this one piece and then I'll build another one to match it when we pour the other layer, the top layer of plaster. Okay, so again, you go down here and make sure, same thing with the Legos, that this is flush with that base modeling clay. Okay, there's that one. That looks good for now. You gotta make sure that these funnels or spouts, whatever you want to call them, are pushed flush against the plaster, or I'm sorry, the modeling clay down below. All right, there you have it. All right, so there's your base modeling clay with the weights in there. Now we're gonna pour the plaster in. So you have your plaster. When doing this size, I know just from experience that I'm gonna get away with just about a cup, maybe a cup and a quarter, okay, of just regular plaster. I'm gonna go ahead and mix that. I already have some water ready. So I generally, when I'm making this, I don't want it to be super runny, but I want it to be runny enough to where it fills all the voids in here. It's not really a fine line, it's just preference. If you are going to use thicker plaster, you're just going to have to make sure to mix it really well, make sure that there are no clumps, and when you pour it, you're going to have to shake the base a lot to get the bubbles to come out. So that's why I like it a little on the thinner side, a little bit on the more fluid side, so the bubbles can come out easier. Takes a little bit more to dry, a little bit longer to dry out, but after the whole process of making the making the molds done, I'll show you how I dry it out before using it. Let's go ahead and pour the water in. You don't need to fill it all the way up right away. Fill it up, and then as you mix and you see what the consistency is, you can add more water in. And again, if it ends up being too thin, you can always add more plaster, right? But you have to go quick. Once you add the water, you got to move quick because the plaster is going to start to set, or that chemical reaction is going to set. So you can see it's really thick, really chunky in there. I'm definitely going to add more water now. If it's your first time, if you haven't used plaster before, definitely follow the instructions on the package to get the proper mixture, so that way you're not messing up a lot and you don't waste any plaster. It is relatively cheap compared to like the silicones, but I prefer the plaster. Stir very well. Make sure to get the clumps out. Make sure to pull it off the sides. You can see the little bubbles are definitely in there. So once we get this done and ready to pour, you pour it in, but then I'm going to shake and tap and whatever on this framework, on this Legos, to get the bubbles to come up. And you really want, again, one major thing that you want to keep track of is you don't want this to be too runny, because if you don't use enough plaster, it's going to make the dried out plaster mold very brittle. So when that hot lead comes in contact with it, it'll crack if there's not enough plaster mixed in, or if your mold sides, so you have a top and a bottom mold, if they're not thick enough, it'll make it brittle too. It'll make it crack. So that looks good right there. It's not dripping, which is good. I don't want it to drip, but it's also looks like it's fairly fluid. So go ahead and get rid of that stir stick. Okay, and I'm going to pour a little bit. Okay, first, and then I'm going to kind of move this around, get it to fill in the holes, fill in the voids before I fill in the rest. Okay. See how all the bubbles, little tiny bubbles are coming out? That's great. That's what we want. Now I'm going to pour the rest. Okay. Again, if we were pouring this for plastics, I wouldn't make the plaster molds as thick. So if I was, if I was doing an injection mold 2-piece, I wouldn't make it this thick. It'd probably be 1/2 inch thick. Because this is lead, this is probably going to be like a 3/4 inch to a inch thick piece. So total, if you include both sides of this mold, it'll probably be about 1 3/4 to 2 inches thick. All right, get the rest of the plaster off the stir stick. All right, I'm going to go ahead and use a rag actually and wipe off the plaster from the piece of Lego, because that'll dry and make it harder to do the top half. Okay, now just go ahead and pound this on the table. Get the bubbles up. Got a little bit of leakage, but not too bad. And not bad at all. Just a little corner. You could see how it's leaking. A little corner out there, a little bit in here. Not too bad at all. You could put, I had the tape up here. I didn't use it because it felt really snug. But, yeah, cool. All right. So that should be most of the bubbles are up. And this will end up being the top or bottom, doesn't really matter. So if the bubbles are up here, that's fine. Don't have to worry about it. You could blow them out or, touch them with the screwdriver to get them out if you want to. But it's really not important because that won't be the side that's touching the weights. Okay, so now regular plaster takes is a drying time of 35 to 45 minutes. I generally give it an hour, hour and 15. So once that comes up, I'll come back and we'll take this apart and we'll do the other half of the plaster. See you in a bit. All right, here we go. First batch, or first side's done. Hard as a rock. Now we'll just take apart one side of the Legos. Get this piece out. Got Legos flying everywhere here. Go. Slide that right out. There you go. Now go ahead and peel the clay off. Okay, actually this little piece came out, so I want to make sure to put that right back in. Alright. Perfect. Not quite perfect, that didn't stay down well. Okay. Alright, there you have it. If you want to take a look, you can go ahead and pull this out. Come on, there we go. So there's the first part, the base, basically, right? Now, what you go ahead and do, okay, that's the proper way right there. Now I'm going to go ahead and take this modeling clay. I'm going to go ahead and make the other half of these funnels. Doesn't have to be perfect. Oh, hi. Friend right there. Mosquito eater. Nothing wrong with those guys. He just kind of get himself a little home here. Alright. Later, dude. Alright. Now, for oiling it, I'm going to use this cocoa butter healing jelly. Use a little paintbrush. This is the releasing agent so the plaster doesn't stick to itself. Okay, and also, just so there's a snug fit, what you want to make sure to do is drill some holes. Drill some holes in that plaster piece right there, so that the mold itself, the two pieces, can lock into each other. I'm going to go ahead and get a bit in here. You don't need a lot, just a couple holes. So I'm just going to do like one there, one there, 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 and there. 5 holes. Alright. You can go ahead and clean these off. Back to oil. Because you want to get those holes too so the plaster doesn't stick in there. I don't know, the process always seems smoother when I do it without videoing, right? I don't know why. It's really weird. Hopefully it still turns out well. I think it will. Okay, so that's all set. I got some oil in here. Again, it's just for a releasing agent so the plaster, the top layer of plaster that we're going to pour, doesn't stick to this layer. Make sure you get it all, otherwise it'll chunk off. Every piece that is going to touch this, or every piece that this second layer of plaster is going to touch, you need to make sure that it has some type of oil or wax on it. Okay, that's squared up. And we go ahead and take these weights again and the rod, stick them back in there. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, that looks good there. That's good there. That's good there. Good there. Excellent. Now we can put this frame, put it back into this framework, add some more Legos, and get ready to pour the second top layer, or I'm sorry, the second layer, which happens to be the top layer, not the second top layer. So down to the bottom, see if we can measure that. All right, don't know if you could see it, but that's exactly an inch from this first layer of plaster to the top of this Lego top here is pretty much exactly 1 inch. Okay, now before we finish, just to make it easier when it comes apart, we're going to add some of this oil onto the bar or onto that wire, as well as onto the weights. Coulda, shoulda done it on the first batch, but totally forgot on that first layer. Completely forgot to add on the oil. And again, that just helps the plaster from sticking onto the weights. Okay. Excellent. Alright, so we're good there. Now we'll go ahead and mix this second batch of plaster. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pour into the holes first, make sure those get filled, and then pour around the weight to make sure all the voids and all the cracks are filled, and then I'll pour in the rest. So I go here like this, and then I do the quick shake, get all the bubbles up, make sure that plaster is going into all the voids. You can see it starting to flatten out, bubbles come up. Cool, now you can pour the rest. Okay, set that aside. Same as the first one, let it sit for about, I let it sit again for about an hour, hour and a half, and then we'll take a look at it. All right, back in a bit again. All right, here we go, moment of truth time. Take that tape off first, throw that away. All right, now we can take this apart. That part up there, chipping don't matter. Pew, Legos everywhere. Pew pew. Alright. Slide that out. And if this was done properly, this is just gonna come right apart. Beep, just like that. Yeah. Look at that. Beautiful. Go ahead and take these guys out. Okay. Go ahead and take the wire out. Little mini screwdriver. There we go. Got that one loose. Slide that one off. Come on. Come on. There, got that one loose. Slide that one off. Okay. There you have it. Not perfect, but you get the idea. Alright, so there's your 3/4, 1/2 ounce, 3/8. So now what I do is I have a like a dehydrator that I use for like smoking meats and making jerky and whatnot. I can get that down to, it's like 110. I usually do it about 110, 110 to 100 degrees. I'll put this in there and go for, 6 to 12 hours. And what it does is it takes all the moisture. We need to get all the moisture as much as possible out of this plaster before we pour the lead in. If you don't, and I showed this in a previous video, but if you don't allow the moisture to be evaporated out of the plaster. When you pour the lead in, it's going to blow up and bubble and boil over. So you have to dehydrate this or let the water and moisture evaporate before you pour your lead in. So I'm going to use a dehydrator. I'm going to put this in and maybe tomorrow come back or a day or so and show you how to then pour the lead. If you are not having a dehydrator and you're just letting it sit, I'd say let it sit for about 2 days, 1.5 to 2 days, and then you'll be ready to use it. But for now, before I do that, I want to get rid of all these shadows since the plaster is still relatively soft. So when you look in here, you'll see, you'll see these shadows in here, right? And that's just from the plaster overlapping. And anywhere where there's plaster with the shadow, that's going to be a spot where the lead grabs and it's going to break the mold. So you want to make sure to get it flush. So say for instance, you see this shadow right here. I'm just going to take this screwdriver and I'm just going to smooth that out up against the side. So there is no ledge, there's no shadow for that lead to get stuck on when you pour. Same with up here. Just pull it out. Doesn't have to be perfect, you just don't want any shadow or any ledge that plaster's, or that lead, I'm sorry, is going to hold on to. Okie doke. So these have been in the dehydrator for a total of probably about 10-12 hours now. So that it should be pretty good, should be dried out enough. I got the lead melting right there. So now we're going to do the finishing touches on this before we pour. So what you want to do is you want to have, where you see the rod came out on this side and that side, you want to take your, like a piece of wire, kind of open that up a little bit on the ends, because we're going to take a wire that's longer than longer than the ends, and that's what we're going to stick in here to make sure that the wire goes all the way through. So again, I'm just taking a little piece of wire, opening up the end a little bit on both pieces of the mold. You could use a drill bit or whatever if you want, but I'm just using a piece of wire for the moment. Alright, that's opened up. Now all you're going to do is get a piece of wire, cut a new piece that's wider than this mold is. Okay, so about right there. Doesn't have to be perfect. Now again, we want to get this piece of wire as straight as possible. Looks pretty good to me. Look pretty good to you? A little off. That's good enough. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and place this into the mold. Just like so. Okay. Now cover it back up. Locks right into place, so you can see that wire's coming out of this side, coming out of that side. Now I'm going to bring the lead over here a bit so it can be middle of the screen. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and pour. So let's see here, I don't remember which one's which. I think that's, well, I guess I can open it. So that's the 3/8, that's the 1/2 ounce, and that's a 3/4 ounce. Doesn't really matter when I go to pour it, but oh, so be it. Alright, so you want that to be right up against there, the spout to be right over the hole, and then you're just gonna pour until it comes out the top. See how it's bubbling? See that? That means it's not quite dry enough yet. But we'll let that one settle just to test it, see if we may need to dehydrate a little bit more. And now we'll do this next one. Okay, I should be wearing gloves since it's boiling or bubbling out. But again, that means there's moisture still in the mold, so I may have to dehydrate it a bit more. I could feel it bubbling in there still, so that's not ideal. Okay, go ahead and pour this last one. So See, that's bubbling in there? Not good at all. That's why you need to let it dehydrate. Maybe do it. See what these look like, and I may dehydrate it for another 4 hours. We'll see. But you can see all that splatter. That's what you don't want. That's what happens when there's still moisture in the plaster. The lead draws it into it, or draws the moisture to it, and that's just the lead bubbling when it comes into contact with water. So we'll go ahead and check this out now, since that should be dried. So this is another mold that I had made previously. These are both 1/2 ounce. So I'm going to use that just to show how to do it, how to pour it, and what it looks like. So apologize for that. I was careless. Like I said, broke it. So instead, I'm just going to use one that's already made. This is for, again, 2 1/2 ounce egg sinkers. Now we're just going to crimp it. So I'm going to use a clamp. I'm going to clamp this tightly. All right. And we're just going to go put it right under the lead. You're going to pour it in. Boom, comes out the top. No bubbling. It's perfect, dried out. That's how it's supposed to look. Excellent. Okay, let's do the other one. And again, huge thing of emphasis. The plaster mold has to be dehydrated, has to be dried out. If there's any moisture, it's just gonna bubble and lead's gonna go flying everywhere. So when it just comes out like that, pours, no bubbling, no splattering, it's been done right, dried out, no moisture in it, perfect. So I'll go ahead and take that clamp off. Go ahead and open this up. And there you have it. Nearly 2 perfect 1/2 ounce sliding sinkers. Go ahead and carefully remove those. Boom. Look how easy that slides right off there. Almost. There you go. Same thing with this side. Usually comes sliding right off. This one's not. Got another pair of pliers. There we go. Okay, that one's off. While those are drying, I'll go ahead and pour 2 more, just to show again how to do it. Let a piece go in there. All right, close it up. Get the clamp. And pour it to the top. Beautiful. Beautiful. Then you just wait for that to be still. That's when it's dried all the way up to the top. So the weights are already dry. Now we're just waiting for this top to dry. Okay, well those are drying over there. You just see if these are good. Not quite. These are still pretty hot still, so we'll let those sit. Okay. I'm going to move the lead over a little bit. I'm not going to need that anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and unplug that. Okay, that's all unplugged and cooling now. Take the clamp off. There you have it again. 2 nearly perfectly poured. Oh, that one even came off. Excellent. Don't even have to worry about that one. Love it. Okay, so there we have it. So a total of 4 nearly perfectly poured sliding egg sinkers that you didn't have to buy at a store for God knows how much they are anymore. I don't know. It's been that long since I've had to buy one because I make them. Okay, now you just take your pliers, break that piece off. Done. Done. Perfect. There you have it. There's those. Now what you do is you take a file. That one was too hot. Wrong one. Which one was cooler? Not that one. That one? Okay. Okay, word of advice. Let them cool down before you start handling, of course. But go ahead and just file these down. Just a little bit, just to get the impurities or the little burrs. Again, the best part about doing it this way with the plaster and making your own mold is that you can make whatever size you want, as long as you have a control, or the one that you want to mold. Of course, you need to have the original something to mold. But I'll just use this one. There you go. 1/2 ounce, perfect. Take the piece of wire, run it through here just to make sure it's all cleared out. After you file it, and there it is, running through the other side. Take it out, boom. There you have it. 1/2 ounce sliding egg sinker, or any size you want it to be, in a plaster mold. There you go. Thanks for watching. Go make your own now that you know how. Super cheap, super easy, effective. Go get some. Thanks for watching.